The first rays of sunlight touched the peaceful green valley, painting the hills in shades of gold. Birds sang happily as the wind danced through the tall grass. In the middle of the valley stood hundreds of young trees, their leaves sparkling with fresh morning dew. Most of the trees had soft soil beneath their roots. They stretched toward the sky with ease, growing taller each season. But at the edge of the valley, hidden between two enormous gray rocks, a tiny seed struggled to survive. That tiny seed dreamed of a tree. The seed pushed with all its strength, but every direction was blocked by hard stone. "I can't grow," the little seed whispered. "There is no space for me." Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. While the other trees proudly grew new branches, the tiny seed remained trapped beneath the rocks. One morning, an old sparrow landed nearby. "Why are you crying, little one?" the sparrow asked kindly. "The rocks won't let me grow," the seed replied. "Everyone else has open land. Why did life choose this place for me?" The sparrow smiled gently. "Sometimes the hardest places create the strongest roots." The seed wanted to believe those words, but nothing seemed to change. Every day it pushed against the rocks. Every day it failed. Sometimes it became so tired that it wanted to stop trying forever. But something deep inside whispered, "One more push." So it pushed again. Tiny cracks slowly appeared in the rocky ground. The progress was almost invisible. No one noticed, not even the seed itself. Spring arrived, and the valley became greener than ever. The young trees laughed as they stretched toward the warm sunlight. "Look how fast we're growing." One tree shouted proudly. "We'll become the tallest forest in the country," another said. The little seed heard every word. It looked at its own tiny sprout barely reaching above the rocks. "I'll never become like them." Dark clouds gathered in the sky. Soon heavy rain poured across the valley. The soft ground around the other trees became muddy. Some smaller trees leaned dangerously as the wind grew stronger. The tiny sprout between the rocks barely moved. The stones protected it from the strongest winds. For the first time, the little sprout realized the rocks were not only obstacles. They were also shelter. When the storm passed, several young trees had broken branches. The tiny sprout remained safe. Still, it was much smaller than everyone else. Years passed. The little sprout slowly became a young tree. Its roots searched desperately for water. Whenever they met another rock, they twisted around it instead of giving up. Every obstacle forced the roots to become stronger. Every challenge made them grow deeper. The other trees didn't understand. "Why do you grow so slowly?" they asked. The young tree stayed silent. How could it explain that every inch of growth required hundreds of tiny battles underground? One summer, the valley faced the worst drought in decades. Day after day, the sun burned the land. Streams dried up, grass turned yellow, leaves began falling from the trees. The trees with shallow roots struggled to find water. Some whispered fearfully, "I don't think we'll survive." But the little tree had spent years searching deep beneath the rocks. Its roots had reached hidden underground water that no one else could reach. Though its leaves became dry, it remained alive. One evening, a frightened rabbit stopped beneath its branches. "I'm thirsty," the rabbit said weakly. The little tree couldn't give water, but its leaves created enough shade to protect the rabbit from the scorching sun. The rabbit rested until sunset before continuing its journey. "Thank you," the rabbit whispered. It was the first time anyone had thanked the little tree. That simple moment filled its heart with hope. Maybe being useful mattered more than being the tallest. Months later, rain finally returned. The valley celebrated, but not every tree recovered. Some had become too weak. Some had died. The little tree looked around with sadness. It remembered how everyone had once admired those fast-growing trees. Now it understood that quick growth didn't always mean lasting strength. Life continued. As the seasons changed, the young tree became stronger. Its trunk thickened. Its roots stretched farther beneath the mountain. Although it still wasn't the tallest tree, it stood with quiet confidence. One autumn afternoon, a group of children visited the valley with their teacher. They admired the colorful leaves and collected fallen acorns. One curious boy wandered toward the rocky hill where the little tree stood. "Teacher," he called, "why would a tree grow here? There's almost no soil." The teacher smiled. "Sometimes nature teaches the greatest lessons." She gently touched the tree's rough bark. This tree had to fight for every inch of its life. The children gathered around. "Does that mean it's stronger?" a little girl asked. "Yes," the teacher replied. "Trees that struggle often develop deeper roots than trees that grow easily." The little tree listened quietly. For years it had believed its difficult beginning was a punishment. Now, For the first time, it wondered if it had actually been a gift. That night, the moon shone brightly over the valley. The wind whispered through its branches. The tree remembered every painful season, every lonely night, every failed attempt, every tear, every moment it had nearly given up. Suddenly, those memories no longer felt like burdens. They felt like proof that it had survived. The next morning, the old sparrow returned. "I see you've grown," the bird said happily. "But I'm still smaller than many others," the tree replied. The sparrow looked toward the forest. "Don't compare your height, compare your strength." The tree remained silent. Deep inside, it finally began to understand. Its journey had never been about growing faster than everyone else. It had always been about becoming strong enough to survive whatever life placed in its path. As winter approached, dark clouds once again gathered over Green Valley. This storm looked different from every storm before. The wind howled across the mountains. Even the oldest trees trembled. The little tree tightened its roots deep beneath the rocks. Something told it that the greatest test of its life was about to begin. Emily was a kind and intelligent family and dreamed of building a successful future. During her second year of college, she met a charming young man named Jason. He was confident, friendly, and knew exactly how to make people feel special. At first, they were simply classmates, but over time they became very close. Jason texted Emily every day. He always checked on her, listened to her problems, and made her feel important. After several months, he confessed his love. "Emily, I love you. I want to spend my life with you." Emily was surprised but happy. She had never met someone who seemed to care so much about her. "Do you really mean that?" she asked. "Of course," Jason replied. "One day we're going to get married." Those words meant everything to Emily. She trusted him completely. Over the following months, Jason constantly talked about their future together. He described the house they would buy, the places they would travel, and the family they would someday have. Emily believed every word. One weekend, Jason asked her to meet him at a hotel. "I need to talk to you about something important," he said. Emily felt uncomfortable but agreed because she trusted him. When she arrived, Jason acted loving at first. Then his tone changed. "If you truly love me, prove it." Emily immediately understood what he meant. "We should wait until marriage," she said nervously. Jason frowned. "Don't you trust me? I do trust you. Then why are you refusing? We're going to get married anyway." For hours he pressured her emotionally. He convinced her that refusing meant she didn't truly love him. He kept repeating promises of marriage and a future together. Eventually, because she believed him and trusted his words, Emily gave in. But after that day, everything changed. Jason became distant. His calls became less frequent. His messages became shorter. Then one morning Emily tried calling him, but his phone was switched off. She tried again later. Nothing. The next day, still nothing. Days turned into weeks. Emily visited the address Jason had once given her, only to discover that he had never lived there. She asked friends at college about him, but nobody knew where he was. Soon she learned that Jason had stopped attending classes altogether. It was as though he had vanished. That was the moment Emily realized she had been deceived. Her heart shattered. Every promise, every dream, every word Jason had spoken suddenly felt like a lie. For months she cried alone. She blamed herself and carried a heavy burden of guilt. The worst part was that she couldn't bring herself to tell anyone what had happened. Her parents noticed she was different. She smiled less and spent most of her time alone in her room. Whenever her mother asked what was wrong, Emily would simply say she was tired. As the years passed, marriage proposals began arriving through family friends. Emily rejected every one of them. She believed she didn't deserve a happy marriage anymore. Her mother became increasingly worried. "Emily, you can't spend your whole life alone," she said one evening. Emily wanted to tell her the truth but couldn't find the courage. A year later, another proposal arrived. The man was named Daniel. He was educated, respectful, and known for his good character. Unlike others, he was calm and humble. After meeting him several times, Emily found him kind and trustworthy. Eventually, she agreed to marry him. The wedding was beautiful. Friends and relatives gathered to celebrate. Everyone believed Emily was beginning a wonderful new chapter in her life. But inside, she was terrified. She feared that if Daniel discovered her past, he would reject her. On their wedding night, she entered the room with fear in her heart. Daniel immediately noticed. "You seem nervous," he said gently. "I'm just tired," Emily replied. Daniel smiled. You don't need to be afraid around me." His kindness made her emotional. Tears filled her eyes. Seeing her cry, Daniel became concerned. "Emily, what's wrong?" For several moments she remained silent. Then she finally told him everything. She told him about Jason, the promises, the betrayal, and the years of guilt she had carried. When she finished, she couldn't even look at Daniel. She expected anger. She expected disappointment. She expected him to leave. Instead, Daniel remained quiet. After a long pause, he spoke softly. "Someone lied to you and took advantage of your trust." Emily slowly looked up. "The person who should be ashamed is the one who deceived you." Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're not angry. No, you don't hate me." Daniel shook his head. "Your value as a person is not determined by someone else's actions." At that moment, Emily broke down in tears. For years she had carried fear and shame. Now, for the first time, someone was treating her with understanding rather than judgment. Their marriage began with honesty. As the years passed, Daniel proved every day that he truly loved her. He never used her past against her. He never mentioned it during disagreements. He never made her feel less worthy. Instead, he supported her dreams, encouraged her education, and stood beside her through every challenge. Eventually, they welcomed a beautiful daughter into their family. Their home became filled with laughter and happiness. One afternoon, while shopping in downtown Chicago, Emily saw a familiar face. It was Jason. He looked completely different. The confident young man she once knew was gone. He appeared tired and defeated. Jason recognized her immediately. "Emily," he said quietly. She remained calm. "Hello." Jason lowered his head. "I owe you an apology." Emily listened silently. "I treated you terribly. I lied to you and hurt you. I've regretted it for years." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emily answered, "You caused a lot of pain. I know, but I learned something because of it." Jason looked up. "What?" "Real love is not built on pressure, lies, or manipulation. Real love is built on respect, honesty, and commitment." Jason nodded slowly. Emily glanced across the street where Daniel and their daughter were waiting for her. "My husband taught me that." Jason followed her gaze. A sad smile appeared on his face. "You deserved better than me." Emily smiled gently. "Yes, and eventually I found it." She turned and walked away. As she reached Daniel and their daughter, they greeted her with warm smiles. Daniel took her hand, and their daughter wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. Looking at her family, Emily realized that the darkest moments of her life did not define her future. The man who had deceived her was now only a memory, while the man who respected her stood beside her every day. And in that moment, she understood that genuine love is not measured by promises spoken in beautiful words, but by actions, loyalty, and the willingness to stay when life becomes difficult.